You could also say ground, neutral, live, right? GNL. Hello and welcome to My Man the Maker. Today we're going to be looking once again at the Ariston FBG IX gas electric stove or oven. And the reason why is because while the gas works, the electric grill, when we operate it, trips the main breaker in the house. And after doing some research and having some experience with these matters, I am pretty sure that the problem is a defective element. So what Mrs. Maker and I did was source a new element from an OEM supplier, which we think will fit. It's a 2250 watt element with a very unique shape. And what we'll be doing today is pulling this oven out of its aperture, disconnecting it from the gas to just work on it, taking the back off, and hopefully replacing that element with a minimum of fuss and difficulty. If I remember correctly, the element has two spade connectors and a couple of screw mounts, and it sits in a friction fitting in the top of the oven, so it shouldn't be too difficult to do the change. The only thing that would complicate this, of course, is if screws don't unscrew correctly, or if the element doesn't have the right connectors. So that seems to be the thing that always hangs projects up. And what we're going to try and do is avoid the hang-ups and get this thing done in as little time as possible, because I'd like to do some other things, but Mrs. Maker needs this oven to be functioning correctly because it's affecting her performance as a chef. And that, of course, is no good. So I guess the next thing I'll do is I'll just show you what the element looks like unboxed, and then I'll put this camera on a tripod and you can watch a time lapse of me pulling the oven out, disconnecting it, taking it apart, and seeing whether or not that element is the right unit. Wish me luck. Here's the element that we received from Amazon. And it's kind of interesting. It's got this steel, I guess you could call it a rail, and that rail is there to stabilize it. And then it's got these terminals in the back. There's one on the left and two on the right, in this orientation at least. And what they're for, I'm pretty sure that there's just things that slide on. They're blade type connectors. Almost, they're the exact same size as the automotive connectors that I've worked with in the past. So, shouldn't be any problem getting it in. Now let's have a look at the inside of the actual stove. The element is hard to see because I don't have much light, but you can see there's that carrier, and it's looking really similar. And as you can see, it's mounted right through the back. So we should be able to get this thing in less than 15-20 minutes. I have a feeling the hardest part is just going to be muscling the oven around and getting it out. So I'm going to put this guy up on the tripod now, and I'll show you me pulling the oven out and then putting in the element. Please remember to turn your gas off before you pull your oven out. I'm going to do that off camera, but I'd like you to remember that if you're doing this kind of work yourself. There we go. Okay. Let me get this back off. I'm seeing an electric box, screw, screw, screw. Okay. There's 1, 2. Here's that's looking like a fan. That's looking like a fan. And 1. So take a quick tour. Well, let's take a quick tour of the existing element as it protrudes through the back of the oven and match it up against the replacement. So as you can see, this replacement looks like it's upside down. So let's flip it over. We have what looks like a ground here. There's a ground wire, and there's a cool. It's blue, so it's probably the neutral. And then we have the live over here. So that means all I need to do is unscrew that screw there, which probably fits into this threaded hole right here. And most likely there's another screw hiding in there somewhere. Some other stuff that I'm seeing is this thing's looking like a timer of some kind. There might be a light here, looking like a light, and some other basic stuff. The terminal block on the stove looks okay. So my guess is most likely there's a short between the ground and the neutral, and that's why this stove is tripping the breaker. So I'll probably be able to do that with maybe check it with my meter after I've got the new element in, and see if the resistance on between these two leads is correct. But 99% of the time when a electric stove trips the main breaker, it's because it has a bad element somehow. So it's a safe bet. Also, it's quite an old oven. It's probably 10, maybe 20 years old. So changing the element just isn't a terrible idea no matter what. This is looking like a temperature gauge here. So that's a sensor for temperature, and this looks like a motor of some kind. So I'll have a look at the inside. Maybe there's a fan that blows on the inside of that oven, and not seeing much else that's really, you know, the ovens aren't all that complicated. They have a light, they have a thermostat, they have an element, and that's pretty much all you need. It's just a box that achieves a certain temperature. Sometimes they have a fan to circulate the air to make the air temperature uniform throughout the chamber, so you don't have hot air at the top and cool air at the bottom, so you get even cooling. So that might be something. And we've got some copper wire coming through here. Don't know what that's for. Looks like a ground. More bare copper here. Sometimes copper is used as a thermostat, but I'm not quite sure what that's for. Anyways, we'll be testing the grill with the oven pulled out and see if it trips a breaker just pulled out of the aperture. If so, then there's a more serious problem. But I guess the first thing I'm going to do is crack open the front of this thing and I'm going to undo this screw and the other screw and see if I can just feed this new element in, now that I've figured out that it's green, blue, brown from left to right, or green, yellow. You could also say ground, neutral, live, right? GNL. So that's how we're going to wire it up. Okay, so I'll put this movie in fast forward again, and you'll see me just pull out the old element and stick in the new one. Okay, I have a extension cord plugged into the, what's a power bar actually, plugged into the outlet, and that particular socket is off. As a matter of fact, the entire power bar is now off. The oven is open because I want to just double check everything. So the wiring of the new element, the element went in no problem, screwed in no problem. So we have the ground, then the neutral. So here's the ground connected, the neutral is connected, and the live is connected. And there's a sensor on the screw for the other side with the single pole to hold a sensor against the back. That might be a thermal cutout of some kind, I don't know. Now this device down here is fascinating. It looks to me like a fan or something, or a timer. I'm not exactly sure, and there's just a hole in the oven on the other side, but it looks geared, so there might be some kind of thing there. And it's funny, it's at a weird angle, and that's not bent. It's the steel's been stamped that way, so I'm not exactly sure what this object is. It's got ground, live, and neutral coming into it. So this is most likely a light, and that's a thermostat, and that's a thermostat, and that's, I don't know, it's got a fancy hot thermal wrapped wire to it, but I don't know if it actually penetrates through to the chamber. So I'm going to take a quicker look at the inside of the oven there, because that's a mystery thing, and Mrs. Maker was complaining about the heat not being even. So that points to like a hole. And I was right about the light. There's a light. So whatever that hole is, I'm not exactly sure why it's there, but it's certainly something to investigate. And then there's not much really going on in this place, in this oven, other than what I pointed out. The new element's in there, popped in just fine. So we're about to test out the oven. And now the reason why I pointed out all those things is those are potential points of failure. Doubtful that the light would trip a breaker. It doesn't pull enough current. Elements definitely could trip a breaker. They pull a lot of current. This one's 2200 watts. It's about 10 amps of power at 220 volts. So that's a significant amount of power, but shouldn't be enough to trip an entire house breaker, which is what happened last time. And then there's this mystery thing in the back. So I might, before I play with this thing, I might just have a look-see online to see whatever that thing is. I want to make sure we're not, like, there isn't some part that's been disconnected and is missing electrically from the oven. So I'll just take a quick break and try to figure out what the heck that thing is in the back. I'll take another look at it with this tray taken out as well, and maybe a photo or two, just to get a better idea of what it is. So that's the next challenge. Wish me luck. Well, after a little bit of research and taking the device off the back of the oven to double check, it turns out that the FBG IX Ariston gas electric oven has a rotisserie. Of course, the little thing that slots into that, basically that's a motor. Who knows where that is, so we may have to order one if we ever choose to do rotisserie, which I doubt because we have a barbecue, but you never know. So that's a motor that just kind of always turns by the look of it, because there's a ground, a live, and a neutral, and I don't know if that live goes anywhere interesting, so we'll have to see if we can find a manual for this. This is another device that could be blowing the breaker, so that's one of the other very few pieces of electrical kit integrated in this oven. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Mrs. Maker operate this oven, because I actually don't know how to turn on the grill. She does. But I'll be turning on the power, and then I'll have her come. So first we turn on the power and see if the entire house goes dark. So that's one. Okay, so no problem there. Next thing we do is we turn on the light to prove that we got power going into this thing. And I believe this is the light switch. So we push this. How do I do this? We push this in and let there be light. There's light. That's good. Okay, great. Now to turn on the grill, I believe you just turn this knob to the right, like this. And you can hear the motor turning, and you can see the fact that we've got, the house didn't short out. And let's see, is there any heat coming off of this grill element? That's the next. We've got a fan running. I can hear a fan. I can hear, yeah, and I can see smoke. So the grill is burning off its, there's a coating of oil on the grill element. Let me just turn that off and see if, should I have wiped off the grill element with something? or should I just use it? I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I shouldn't have wiped that element off. Maybe there's some sort of shipping stuff that I should have taken off, in which case I'll just remove it from the oven and I will clean it, probably with alcohol, I don't know, and then I will reinstall it. But what I can tell you is that our electric oven is now working and no longer shorting out the house. So that's a wonderful outcome. Well, it's been about a month since I replaced the grill element on the Ariston oven, and I am pleased to say that it's been working fantastically. So that element you sort of see there dimly outlined has been working great. And just to give you a quick recap, I found out that that motor thingy was a rotisserie, which I don't think we'll ever use. There was a light and this element right here, which you can sort of barely see. So the element now heats up great. We use it all the time, and I just wanted you to know that the install was a complete and utter success. The first time we turned it on, it burned off that shipping coating of oil, never to return. And the tripping breaker that kept going when we turned this oven on was the ground fault. So what had happened is, when the element heated up, it created a ground fault between the cool wire and the grounding wire, which immediately tripped the breaker. So that's why this element was no good. So the replacement worked. The oven is now 100% functional, and I'm pleased to say that Mrs. Maker has been using it to full effect to make Mr. Maker fat and happy, which is exactly how he wants to be. That's it for now. That's all I have to say about this oven. It's a completed project that took several weeks to fix because it was first not set up correctly, then not hooked up correctly, then not plugged in, then it was blowing breakers, and now the gas and the electrical elements are both working flawlessly, and I can say adieu to the oven once and for all and move on to other projects. So fare thee well, and as always, keep making. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please consider subscribing, giving me a like, and leaving me a comment. I really enjoy making these videos, and I want to know from you how I can make them better. The whole point of these videos is to demonstrate that if I can do something, you can do it too. Well, that's it for now. So long, and remember, keep making.